After personally coaching hundreds of Chinese learners and thousands more through our courses, I found there's always one thing holding back progress with Chinese, one major bottleneck. Fix that first and everything becomes way easier. So when you feel slow or no progress, most Chinese learners, including myself back in the day, try more things. More apps, more tutors, more study hours, but this is like filling a bucket with a huge hole in the bottom. So today I'm going to help you identify your number one constraint, the exact thing holding back your Chinese progress right now. Then I'll give you a clear, actionable plan to break through it. So this works whether you're a complete beginner who doesn't know a single character or you've been studying for years but kind of just feel stuck. So which constraint is holding you back? Let me walk you through each one I've seen. Now, the first major constraint is to do with structure, which all comes down to what you're learning and when and in what order. And I'll choose an imaginary learner as an example to illustrate this problem. So meet Sarah. She's downloaded 12 different apps, tried 3 online courses, hired 2 tutors as well. She studies 2 hours a day, but feels like she's going in circles. If that sounds familiar, now Sarah has a structure constraint. It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint. You're working hard, but you're building in the wrong order. So to fix this, you need to learn the right words at the right time, which means having the right curriculum, materials, and learning sequence that leads to efficient progress. The next major constraint is to do with methodology. So meet David, another imaginary learner. He's been studying for 2 years and knows 800 characters, but he keeps forgetting them. He watches Chinese shows designed for kids and can get through most learner materials. He can have basic conversations, but never anything too deep. He doesn't know how to progress further. He's spending money on tutors, but his speaking just isn't improving. David has a methodology constraint. This is when you know roughly what to study, the most common and useful Chinese words, but you don't know how to learn them, how to use them like a native, and how to make them stick permanently. So to fix this, you need to use the right techniques that allow you to remember and use Chinese efficiently. Now, the third major type of constraint is consistency. So here's Maria, another imaginary learner. She's confident that she's learning the right things, that her approach is effective, but she just can't seem to stick to her study routine, no matter what. She starts strong, she studies an hour every day for 3 weeks, and then work gets busy. She skips a day, and then a week, and then finds herself restarting her Chinese journey every few months. Maria has a consistency constraint, and the fix for this is easy to say, but more difficult to follow through on. You simply need to show up every day to access the power of compounding progress, which I'll help you with later in the video. Now, most learners I've met struggle with all 3 of these constraint types, but the good news is you fix them in order and each one becomes easier to fix after that. Based on your constraint, here's a personalized plan for exactly what to do to fix it. So if your constraint is structure, you just need to know what to focus on and when. So right now, you're probably jumping from app to tutor to course, constantly second guessing yourself, right? Should I focus on listening or speaking or reading? Should I learn from Chinese TV shows, learner podcasts, graded readers, or listen and repeat programs? Should I learn from a frequency list or this phrase book that I found on Amazon.com? What about speaking? How do I practice and improve that specifically? Or is it even the right time now to actually focus on that? So these constant questions create decision fatigue that drains your energy and makes you want to quit. So here's your structure action plan. Find a list of the most common 3,000 characters and 10,000 words in Chinese. This is almost 100% of the language by frequency, enough for even the highest levels of fluency. Learn everything in context of sentences made from characters and words you already know. Now, ideally, you learn at least the most common few hundred characters, maybe 1,000 characters first, then the most common 1,000 to 2,000 words. This foundation will allow you to understand example sentences, so you can understand words in context and start to acquire grammar naturally and get some real momentum in the language. So this will involve you finding or creating your 3 lists, one for characters, one for words, and one for thousands of sentences. And you can do this yourself if you're highly disciplined, and that could work fine, or follow our course to master 3,050 characters and just under 12,000 common words, all laid out for you in a logical, comfortable order, all with example sentences for every usage of every word. Now that you know this, if your constraint was structure, congratulations. Now it's not. You know what to do and when. So let's move on to solving the next constraint. The next bottleneck is methodology. So you know roughly what to study, but not how to make it fun and actually make it stick. You keep forgetting characters and words, you can't understand spoken Chinese despite tons of study time, or you're spending money on tutors and not progressing. So the first major key here when it comes to methodology is to learn holistically. Avoid going too top down, which is just pure rote memorization, parroting phrases mindlessly. And on the opposite side, avoid doing too bottom up, which is just learning characters all day without seeing them in context of words, or learning thousands of words without example sentences. Learning too top down is like having a shoddy house that could collapse at any time. Too bottom up is like having just a brickyard with no house. You need to balance both. So learn characters and words, but always see them in context of sentences. So how do you actually do this? How do you actually learn holistically and make everything stick? Well, that's where the BGAI system comes in. So this is the exact methodology framework that we use with all of our members to solve the forgetting problem and make Chinese learning as efficient and enjoyable as possible. So let's start with B for build. Build comprehension. So this means to consciously learn characters and words to increase your passive vocabulary and therefore your understanding of Chinese, which is kind of the first major step. So for remembering characters, forget writing them hundreds of times until your hand cramps. Instead, use our memory palace technique, the Hansa movie method. I've got full guides for free on my channel. And of course, you can join our free course to just learn it step by step at no charge. It makes the hardest part, what was previously the hardest part of learning Chinese, genuinely easy. And some of our members can learn 50 to 100 or more characters per day with near perfect retention compared to the 10 to 20 characters per week with traditional methods with rubbish retention. So for remembering words, use mnemonic association. There's just nothing better. So to do this really easily, you just connect new Chinese words to similar sounding words that you already know. So for example, the word 飞机 means aeroplane, and it sounds like fei, like fly, and ji, maybe you don't know what ji means. You don't know that ji is a character meaning machine. So it's flying ji, so flying ji. Imagine a big letter G flying through the air, or a pink jumbo jet flying over Mount Fiji. All right, so this creates strong connections in your brain that makes it super easy to recall later. So allowing you to easily learn 100+ words in a single session once you get good at it. And remember, yes, you're eventually aiming for 3,000 characters and 10,000 words, but you're going to have many amazing milestones along the way, long before you reach that eventual goal. So, for example, learning just 1,000 characters using these memory palaces gives you 90% coverage of the entire language. 1,600 common characters unlocks 5,000 common words if you follow our curriculum, which is more than enough for B2 or conversational intermediate fluency. This is doable in well under 200 hours, maybe even under 100 hours in total if you just get good at the Hansa movie method and that mnemonic association technique quickly. And if you stay consistent with this technique, not only will you get better at the techniques themselves, but as your vocabulary of Chinese words grows, creating mnemonic associations becomes exponentially faster because you can create associations with other Chinese words you know too. So for example, 毕业 means to graduate in Chinese. Let's say that's a new word for you. Well, 毕 and 业 mean finish and career separately. So finish, career. So you could say, oh, I've finished university, now I'm ready to start my career. 毕业. But you could also connect to other Chinese characters that sound the same. So 笔 means pen. So you could have some sort of idea of a pen used in your mnemonic visualization. 业 here means career, but it also means also with a third tone. It's another character, 业, that means also. So maybe you could use that, for example. You'll have more potential hooks to grab onto to create memorable mnemonics for this particular word. And the third major element of the build stage in terms of methodology is to make sure that you're reviewing efficiently, because this is a lot of new information. Even with amazing memory palaces and mnemonics, you're still going to forget words if you don't review them, right? But do not review using paper flashcards or just writing things down over and over again or trying to organize your review schedule yourself. Use spaced repetition software. It handles all of that for you, automatically organizing what you need to review daily based on what you're about to forget and saving you tons of time and energy. The only catch is that you have to finish those reviews every single day for the algorithms to work. Now, the next phase of the BGAI system is the G, which stands for Get Comprehensible Input. And most learners go wrong here. They either stick with just textbook or phrasebook examples that are too simple and often kind of awkward and not how a native speaker would actually speak, or they dive straight into native content, which is way too hard for most people. So that's kind of like trying to bench press 300 pounds when you can barely do 100, right? So you're not going to get much out of that. So really, you can just stick with example sentences so you can learn how to use the words you're learning in context and acquire grammar naturally. Yes, you could dive into native content, immerse in that for sure once you've got a few thousand words under your belt. But until you get there, example sentences are absolutely fine. Just whatever you do, do not learn words individually from a list based on a definition. It has to be in sentence form so that you can understand the grammar and be able to use them in conversation later. So context is king. Do reading and listening practice using full sentences, and those sentences should use characters and words you already know. If you don't know them, learn them using mnemonic association. It doesn't take more than a few seconds. Your daily practice should include listening to sentence audio files and reading the sentences, preferably at the same time at first, as much as possible each day. Try to avoid just passively consuming more advanced content like audiobooks or podcasts or TV shows, especially if you aren't advanced yet. That's kind of inefficient. Focus on sentences made up of characters and words you've already learned that contain the most common 5,000 to 10,000 words in the language. As you get past beginner stage into intermediate and advanced levels, yes, you can start to incorporate more native speaking content. That's good for listening practice. But wherever you have active study time, where you have time to sit at your computer, or you just have the ability to focus 100% and learn that way, your time is best spent practicing with example sentences. And if you do practice with TV shows, then I recommend a technique called sentence mining, where you extract the sentence containing the word or the phrase that you want to learn straight from the TV show, along with the original audio and a screenshot. Now, the third phase of BGAI is to activate your knowledge through structured speaking practice. So this speaking practice should build on what you learned in the previous stages. Many learners try to speak too early before they have enough vocabulary and patterns to draw from. Treat speaking like learning an instrument. You don't get good at piano by performing in concerts every day. You get good at piano by practicing over and over again at home, and then when you do finally perform, it's like a benchmark, proof that your practice was actually effective. So don't rely only on native speakers as your primary way of practicing speaking. You'll end up using similar words most of the time and rarely venture into new vocabulary unless your teacher is just amazing, and amazing teachers are hard to find. So I personally recommend 3 stages to your speaking practice. Stage 1 is to listen and repeat. So start with sentence audio, you listen and repeat it out loud. This is not passive listening. You're actively training your mouth muscles to form Chinese sounds. Repeat sentences 3, 5, even 10 times in a row until it flows more naturally. Focus on matching the rhythm and intonation, not just the individual sounds. The second stage is shadowing. So once you're comfortable with listen and repeat practice, upgrade to shadowing. Shadowing means speaking along with the audio, kind of like you're singing along to a song, but with a slight delay. I recommend VLC Media Player. It works really well. It's free, and you can adjust the playback speed of what you're listening to. So listen and repeat is like this.
简单的主谓宾结构。
简单的主谓宾结构. So after the audio, but this is shadowing. 根本不用学，太简单了，只需稍微沉浸在语言环境中就好了。So you're speaking just with a slight lag behind the audio. Shadowing and listen and repeat improves your pronunciation, your rhythm, and helps you internalize the natural flow of Chinese speech. It also helps if you're moving around, like while you're on a walk, while shadowing. That activates different parts of your brain and makes the practice even more effective. And this will be tough at first, especially if you're a beginner. You might want to read along with the sentences as you're trying to shadow them. That will help a lot. And once you've shadowed your example sentences a ton, you're familiar with them, you can move on to stage 3, retrieval practice. This is the most challenging but most rewarding stage. So retrieval practice means forcing your brain to recall information from memory instead of just repeating what you hear. So here's exactly how to do it. You take a sentence that you've been practicing with, you look at the English, and you try to say the Chinese from memory. Don't peek at the Chinese first, just force your brain to retrieve the information, try and say it out loud as a Chinese sentence, and then check the answer. This is a very similar process to actually speaking in real time, and it's great practice. It kind of activates the same parts of your brain. And again, it's hard at first. You're going to make lots of mistakes, and those mistakes are good. We all have to go through the process of not being very good at speaking before we get good at speaking, but you no longer have to put yourself in awkward or embarrassing speaking situations as your only form of language activation. You can actually make the vast majority of your mistakes like this in private during your practice time. Another activation method you can use is trying to speak to yourself for 1 or 2 minute bursts multiple times throughout your day. Narrate what you're doing in Chinese using the sentences that you've learned, for example. You can also try uploading your sentences to an AI like ChatGPT or something and have it ask you questions related to the sentences, so it prompts you to produce them in real time. Finally, try and book a native speaker once or twice a month just to benchmark your progress. Think of these sessions as your piano recitals. They're not where you learn, they're where you test what you've already learned through private practice. Tell the tutor you want to practice specific sentence patterns, not just chat randomly. Now, the fourth and final part of the BGAI system solves the third and final constraint of consistency. So if your problem is consistency, this final phase of BGAI is to integrate Chinese into your life. Well, this is the glue that holds it all together, because you could have methods and structure that kind of suck, but if you're consistent, you could still get to a very high level in the language. So here's a consistency sort of action plan that you can get started with today. Number one, know your why. It's very important you have a good reason for learning Chinese because it takes a lot of time, right? So write down exactly what you want to do with Chinese. Do you want to connect with family, read novels, have deep conversations with certain people? Be specific, and then think about the negative consequences of not achieving this, as well as the positive visualization of achieving it and what that looks like. Next, you want to make sure you get into some kind of routine. Routines are incredibly powerful. Set aside time each and every morning or evening, ideally morning if you can, using your calendar. Maybe you set an alarm on your phone. 15 to 45 minutes if needed. Just 15 minutes is great to start off with, and you can grow from there. Step 3 is to lower friction. Create your materials like your flashcards and audio files and keep them on your phone so you can access them in an instant. I keep audio files ready to go on VLC Media Player just so I can click play and listen and shadow throughout my day. Step 4 is a reminder just to start small, okay? 15 minutes is fine just to start off with and see what that turns into. But you have a minimum that you set for yourself every day, and you definitely do that minimum. That's something that's so small and so easy that it's like laughable. Just make sure you get that done every day, and then you can just continue on from there. Step 5 is to create accountability. So that's why we invest so much time and energy into our free community, because community is powerful. So if you can find a community, again, click link in the description if you want to join ours, and connect with other Chinese learners who will hold you accountable, and also just be part of a platform where you can share your ideas, your wins, your struggles. That's very, very powerful. Part 6 when it comes to consistency is no 0 days. Even 1 minute of listening before bed counts, right, as a non-zero day. So continuous daily actions will reinforce your identity as a Chinese learner. And once you take on that identity, it becomes difficult not to do the work, okay? So let's recap how to use this system so Chinese fluency becomes simple for you starting today. So first, identify your constraint. Structure means you're jumping between resources without really knowing what you're doing, without a clear plan. Methodology means you're forgetting everything you learn. Consistency means you keep starting and stopping despite having good structure and methodology. Work on these one by one in order, starting with structure, the most fundamental step. If your constraint is structure, get the most common 3,000 characters and 10,000 words in frequency order. Learn them in context of sentences, not in isolation. Stop jumping between apps and courses. Stick with one system proven to work. If your constraint is methodology, use the first 3 parts of the BGAI system. Build with memory palaces and mnemonic techniques for characters and words. Get comprehensible input through sentence practice. Activate with listen, repeat, shadowing, and then retrieval practice. If your constraint is consistency, write down your specific why. Block 15 to 30 minutes every single morning. Keep materials on your phone, aim for no 0 days, join a community of Chinese learners as well to hold you accountable and share wins. Your action step right now is to choose your biggest constraint and take the first action I outlined for that constraint today. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't plan to start next week. Do something small but concrete in the next hour. If you want us to guide you step by step through this entire process in more detail, I've put together a longer video that dives into it right here.